Strive and Thrive is a collection of discussions featuring guests from various fields, focused on guiding entrepreneurs in creating businesses that excel in every aspect: people, planet, and profit. Throughout the series, you can join us, Romesh and Mike, as we explore relevant topics with our guests which can help businesses thrive.
Romesh and I met while I was supporting a client transform their business. And I needed finance director support and reached out to him and his team. Since then, we've become good friends who share a passion for business and entrepreneurship. If you like today's discussion, then you want to subscribe to our YouTube and Spotify channels.
Hi everyone, and welcome to our latest episode with Debbie Gilbert, who is an award-winning founder of multiple businesses. I've had the pleasure of knowing Debbie for a number of years, and we first crossed paths in a networking group. Since the late 1990s, Debbie has built a portfolio of businesses which have a common theme: supporting and inspiring entrepreneurs. Debbie is particularly focused on supporting women in business. So, hey, Debbie, thank you so much for joining us. How are you doing today?
Yeah, really well. Thank you for inviting me.
Hi, Debbie.
Wow, we're very happy to have you here. So you now run 3 businesses, having started out as an entrepreneur almost 30 years ago. Gosh, a long time. Can you start off by giving us a quick overview of those businesses and very quick journey to date?
Yeah, so the actual company is the Viva Business Group, and I like to say that we have different products within that. So we have the marketing agency, which is Viva Business Support, so supporting entrepreneurs and small businesses with their marketing. I've got the Best Business Women Awards, which is the national awards for female entrepreneurs. And I've also got a networking company called Business Women Unlimited. I recently sold the Three Counties Expo, which sold that at the back end of last year. And I'm about to launch the Best SME Awards. So they're not separate businesses. They all come under the Viva Business Group, but they've all been set up separately because obviously I have an exit plan. And like the Three Counties Expo last year, I was able to sell that because I'd set it up with its own identity and its own website. And my name is not mixed up in any of them. So that's my strategy.
I can hear the experience kind of oozing out of those words, Debbie. So you've obviously, well, congratulations on the exit, first of all, of that business. And I know that was a very good one. You've obviously set things up, so, you know, with a real eye to the future. So can you tell us about, you know, your journey today? You know, where did you start off and how did you get to this point?
So I would love to tell you that I've got a business degree and that I was very entrepreneurial, but that is a complete nonsense because no, I don't. I fell into running a business 27 years ago out of a need. And that need came from having a small child of only 3 years old and needing flexibility to work around him and also to care for my father who got dementia at the age of 56. So I had a very successful career in the city, in the travel industry. And back in 1994, flexible working really wasn't a thing. And, you know, I carried on when I went back to work when he was born for a good couple of years, negotiating life as a single parent with my son and dealing with nannies and all sorts of childcare problems and issues. And I decided that actually I'd had enough. And so I wanted to relocate from South London back up to Hertfordshire, which is where I was from, and that I would regroup and decide what my next steps were. So I left my job, went back home to my hometown, and it quickly became evident there was something wrong with my dad. My mother had been sort of hiding the situation from me. And the long and short of a very long story, he got diagnosed with a very rare form of dementia, frontal lobal dementia. So, I mean, I needed to earn a living, but, you know, there weren't very many flexible roles in those days, even part-time, unless you wanted to work in a supermarket or a shop or something. So I started doing some support work for a friend of mine's husband's plumbing company and supporting him with what then was local marketing. So dealing with the Yellow Pages and the Thompson Local and writing copy for ads for the local newspaper. Very different times. But from that, I went to a networking group on his behalf, which was at 6 o'clock in the morning. I was one of only 2 women in a room full of 30 men, most of which were tradesmen. And I think they realised the support that I was giving to the plumbing company and started asking me if I could help them. So that is how the business was born.
Wow. So it kind of just evolved naturally. And so marketing was the first.
Yeah, I'd done some many years before that. Before I went into the travel industry, I'd worked in marketing for the company that makes the Ovaltine drink, Wonder Foods.
Oh.
So I'd had some training there. And then once I got my business off the ground, a few years later, I went and did my Chartered Institute of Marketing qualifications at the University of Hertfordshire. But at the time, it was very much self-taught of, what was out there at that time. Because you have to remember, there was no social media. You have to remember that at that time, you could only send 120 characters on a text message on a mobile phone, and that the internet was just emerging. So, even websites were a very, very new thing in the early 2000s. And I always remember a guy saying to me, "Oh, these websites, love, they're not going to catch on." And I look back on it all now. But I'm really pleased that I've been through that journey, because I've been able to adopt technology as it's come along. And yeah, it's really interesting how things have changed in 27 years.
That's a really kind of key aspect, actually, and I think really relevant to now, because I think that there's just been an acceleration of change, hasn't there? And there's been so much change in what you've just talked about. Yellow Pages. Some of our listeners and followers may not even remember what that is. So can you give us some thoughts on how you've managed to keep up with that change, and perhaps a flavour of what you feel you might do to keep up with that accelerated change going forward?
Yeah, I mean, the changes, I think it's never been so easy to set up a business, but what's hard is actually keeping it running and keeping it going beyond the 5 years, because you'll know that the failure rate in the first 5 years is exceptionally high. I guess what I've seen over the years and what I've tried to do is keep abreast of technology and what's happening and what new tools are out there that can help with marketing and generally running your business, not just marketing. I'm always shocked when I come across people who are still using Word documents to do invoicing, for example, or keeping their accounts on an Excel spreadsheet, or there's still very much manual processes going on when actually you can automate so much. And, obviously AI is going to hugely impact the marketing industry. I can see that, and I'll probably get castigated for saying this, but I actually think that the way marketing agencies are operating and will operate in the future will become very, very different because of AI. I went and did some AI qualifications about 18 months ago now. And luckily, I'm still part of their cohort group. So I get updates and I get the ability to be able to go to follow-up sessions about the changes, because it is literally changing by the hour, by the second almost. And I do think that, I've had to forward plan and start thinking about, what's my business going to look like in 5 years if I don't act? Hence why I've launched the other business awards, because I feel like business awards are almost protected from AI, certainly for the foreseeable future, because people still like to get together in a room and celebrate success. So it's almost like looking at what parts of my business are going to be affected by AI. And I would urge any business owner to look at that, because I still remember Kodak disappearing and Blockbusters disappearing and all of these companies that thought that they weren't going to be affected by technology change, and yet it wiped them out. So I'm very aware that we are already in a situation now where any business, to be honest, could use AI to do their marketing now. If I'm honest, I do think that is a real problem for the marketing industry.
So there's going to have to be a lot of change and adaptation. Sorry, go ahead, Mike.
I was just going to say I think I do lots of work in AI as well, Debbie, and I think in marketing world there's still a need to understand how to do marketing. It's just the tooling and the capability to support some of the automation will create rapid change in the space. But what I find interesting from your explanation is that you very much think about your business. Do you think about it all the time, what it's doing, how it's working? The way you explained Viva and what you've done and the business awards, I feel like you're always looking at your business, always looking at what it's doing, why it's doing, what the next challenges are, what you could do. Is that a mental model that you've got as a person? Because that is very different from a lot of the founders that we meet who spend a lot of time in the business doing the work.
I don't do a huge amount of the actual work. I think I'm quite a strategic thinker.
Yeah, I can see that.
I do, because I'm not going to be around forever. I'm not far off of 60 now. And I have to forward plan and think, every business that I've ever set up, and as I said, they are actually all one business, believe it or not, but they're products within that. That's how I describe them. Has been set up with the aim that one day it will be sold to somebody else. That's a fact, because I'm not going to, be here forever. So I've had to look at that and how I do that. And the biggest mistake people make is they call themselves, if I'd called myself Debbie Gilbert's Marketing Services, for example, my name is then attached to that business. That business doesn't have the same value when it has my name attached to it if I no longer run it. So I would urge anyone listening to this to seriously think about branding their businesses themselves. Because it's not a wise decision, fundamentally, if you eventually want something that you can sell to somebody else.
Has that always been your strategy? Have you always been very strategic and you've always thought about it? Because it's very unusual with lots of the founders that we talk to, and I know you talk to lots as well. They often have a problem they want to fix and they want to do the work in the business and they want to be a consultant or build a product. Whereas you're coming across very much as thinking about strategically, what am I trying to do with this business? Where do I want it to evolve? If it's going to struggle with AI, what does that mean for it? And what do I do with it? And what do I do with the other parts of the business that I'm building up?
So I did a deep dive at the end of last year into every single client that we have. And I actually looked at them and where their strategy was going. So
amazing.
I have to remember, I have a lot of clients that I've had for 15 years, some of them, if not longer. So a lot of these people I've been with for a very, very, very long time as their outsourced marketing department. So I decided to do a strategic look at everything after doing the AI courses and starting to look at, wow, this is incredible. Some of this stuff that you can literally program it with a few things and it will spew out 12 months worth of content. And I'm not necessarily saying it's all on point, but what I'm trying to say is, we had lost some blogging clients because they were using ChatGPT to write their blogs. And I'm not saying that that's, in fact, one of them came back to us not long after trying to do that. But companies are always looking for ways to save money. Let's be really transparent about that.
Of course, yeah.
And so they're looking for ways to cut their costs. And of course, if you can, we saw this with the advent of the apprenticeship scheme. So companies then bringing in a young person on the apprenticeship scheme to do their marketing because they think that, a young person who knows how to use Instagram can do their marketing. A lot of companies then realize that actually they need somebody like me to help this apprentice deliver it properly. And I've done a lot of that over the years working with apprentices. But fundamentally, I did a deep dive last year, and this was quite a huge piece of work. And it was like, okay, so where is this client going? And having conversations with them. and realizing, you know, I work for a firm of accountants, that I think the team there, they're going to be looking at either merging or selling in the next few years because they want to retire. Yeah. So I started looking at each individual client and where their journey was, and realizing a lot of my clients were my age. So that in itself was like, wow. And I don't think personally I'm that appealing, despite the amount of experience and knowledge that I've got, to a younger, more, so say a founder who's probably in their early 30s, which is the same age as my eldest son. They're not going to want to work with me. I'm realistic. They're going to want to work with somebody of their own age group, or their own, maybe somebody slightly older, but certainly not the same age as their mum. So, you know, you've got to be realistic about where your new business is coming from. And I started to then look at, well, what is it that I enjoy about my businesses? Because I've reached the point now where I think, you know, I can pick and choose the work that I do. I'm very lucky now with that. And actually, awards is really where my heart is, which is why I sold the Expo company, one of the reasons. And awards and networking are probably where my heart is. And I love doing the marketing, but it's changing. And do I still want to be a part of this AI generated stuff that is going on? The answer is no, I don't, if I'm honest. And so I'm working to exit the marketing company. I've got potentially somebody that I'm going to be passing my clients on to, and exiting that side and focusing on the awards business. I have quite big plans for the awards business going forward, and the networking company will still run alongside that. And I don't get very involved in that day to day. I have group leaders that run the groups, and one of my team manages all the admin, all the social media, everything. So I'm just like the head of the company, if you like, but I don't really have a huge amount of input.
And
it's really admirable how you are kind of leading that strategic thinking, kind of living and breathing it. That's amazing. Just want to kind of touch on two areas there which really interested me and I think are worth exploring. So the first one, if I may, and then I'll hand back to Mike once we've kind of covered that. Also, I do want to cover the awards in more detail, but perhaps a little bit later in our discussion. But the thing I'd like to ask is on business exit. That's something that, you know, as a fractional finance director, you know, and with my team, we kind of help businesses with. And one of the key messages I was hearing from what you're saying there was that actually you're building businesses that are given direction and support and leadership by you, but which are not dependent solely upon you to function. Is that one of the key ingredients to creating a successful kind of exit scenario?
Absolutely, 100%. You know, and I agree, there are people out there that want to be a consultant and they call themselves Joe Bloggs Consulting or whatever. And maybe their vision is not to have something they can sell eventually, but I always built my businesses with a view to selling them eventually at some point. So you know, you have to have that strategy before you've even set up your business, if that makes sense. You should know what the outcome is going to be further down the line and what you want from it. And a lot of people don't do that piece of work.
And
so what are the other...
Sorry,
Mike, go ahead.
I was going to say, you think strategically there, but does that include who you hire and how you build the business as well? Because rather than you're totally thinking about someone who's going to lead that business rather than just deliver the workload, and then sort of take on more and more responsibility and building up a team around you.
Exactly.
Yeah, so which is often a founder's mistake, right?
Mm.
Yeah. Bringing on board staff that you can develop and nurture, and kind of they grow as the business grows. Debbie, Mike and I are falling over ourselves here in terms of asking you questions here, so that's a really good start. But just so, can you give you know, perhaps a couple of other key bullet points in terms of what else a business owner should think about when they're looking to set up their business for exit in the kind of medium term?
So obviously getting good financial advice, I'm going to say that because it's so true, and working.
Yeah, yes, I love that.
Yeah, but it's true. And I speak again to a lot of people. So if I'm doing some marketing work for somebody, so this is probably a good example to share. People are often a bit shocked at the questions I ask. So they're like, well, you're here to talk about my marketing. And I'm like, no, because I need to understand what products and services you're selling. What's your break-even points? What's your financials like? I need to know a lot more information than I think sometimes people think that a marketing consultant would need to know. But actually, how can you decide what you're going to spend on marketing if you don't actually know your basic numbers? And I'm always shocked by businesses that are turning over a lot of money, hundreds of thousands, if not millions, and they actually have no handle on their numbers whatsoever. Oh, my accountant deals with that. Well, you need to know this stuff yourself. And I think that's the failure of some of the businesses out there, because they spend the money on the wrong things because they don't fully understand their numbers. So getting somebody to help you with your finances, I think getting somebody to help you as a business coach. I've worked with a lot of business coaches over the years. And I think building a strong network around you of the right people, because again, I see people going to networking events and they're probably not the right networking events for them. So it's about really understanding, because actually you might be better off in a business mastermind group as opposed to a networking group. It depends on who you are, what your objectives are, what your business is about. And I watch a lot of people with bright, shiny thing syndrome, and they run off to all these different things and they're not very strategic about what they're doing. So I think, saying no is not a bad thing sometimes. If it's not the right thing for you to be doing with your business, you need to have the confidence to say, no, sorry, it's not for me.
Those are some excellent points. I must comment on the finance point. Sorry, Mike, because obviously I'm so wedded to that. Mike shakes his head with a wry smile. But yeah, absolutely right, Debbie. I mean, I've even experienced that kind of lack of understanding of numbers, even at kind of massive company scale. I've worked very large corporations in the past, which were quite acquisitive, and we would sometimes buy businesses that might have turnover over 100 million quid, but they wouldn't necessarily understand geographically, location wise, product wise, what their most kind of successful products or services were. They just looked at everything in the aggregate and maybe on a quarterly basis. I just couldn't get my head around it, because you're absolutely right. If you can get a real handle on the numbers, you get to understand your business better and you can run it more effectively. But moving on for that final point before I let Mike kind of ask some better questions. The AI course you mentioned, and you've kind of then gone on to say, obviously, that maybe AI isn't necessarily what you want to embrace in the future, which is why you might want to go and focus on the awards. But doing that course, what did that tell you? What did that teach you about the best ways to maybe embrace the change that we're experiencing and is coming?
Yeah, so up to that point, I did my course of MMC learning, and I chose them because, oh God, I'm going to sound really stupid now. I can't think of his name. Peter, who's one of the partners in that company, is very prolific in the Chartered Institute of Marketing. And I dabbled around with AI for probably about a year before I did the course, but knew I probably wasn't using it as effectively as I could be. So I did the two courses. So I did the the written generative AI course, and then the image generator course, which covered things like Hey Gen, Midjourney, DALL-E, and then ChatGPT is the one they focused on. I mean, there are others out there. But I think what it did was it opened my eyes to the future of marketing and where it was going to take away from my business. And for example, I used to spend hours writing a marketing plan, and I've tested the marketing plans that come out of ChatGPT, and actually they're pretty good. And that saved me a lot of time. I mean, obviously it's only as good as the information you put in it, and it still needs that human input. In my opinion, it still needs a human input to go through the information that it puts out. But of course, as the more people use it every single day, ChatGPT is learning more information, and I can almost vision that Google must be very concerned because people are now using it as a search engine as well. So I think it can work really well alongside the business for a certain amount of time, but I do think there'll come a point where businesses will be like, well, why do we need to use a marketing agency? Why do we need that middleman? Can we not just use this ourselves? So I think that will, and again, I'm sure there are going to be people commenting madly, telling me I'm talking nonsense, but I honestly don't believe I am. And I've looked at this quite deeply, and I just believe as an industry, we are going to get hit with this quite badly.
I think you've got to evolve. I think that's the evolution of what is a value proposition in this space is going to change significantly. And I've been talking to lawyers, accountants, same problem as marketing. Yep. And I think it doesn't mean you don't want an accountant or a lawyer or a marketer. It's just what role will they play in supporting you? And as a business, you've got to think about what that looks like. And I think that's where I think AI's got a lot to play out here. I also think people have got a lot to learn on what it can and can't do, and can't do being the other test here. Everyone assumes it can write a really good marketing plan, but it can only really write it if the person who knows what a good marketing plan looks like in the first place.
Yeah, it's all about the prompts, which is what I've tested on it. And I was quite surprised how good it was, if I'm honest. But again, I'd learned how to do the detailed prompts, and I think where people fall down with it is they don't really know what they're doing with it. And so they'll say, oh yeah, it's a load of rubbish. But actually, if you know what prompts to put, you still need to fact check stuff. I mean, I did something the other week and I was looking at it thinking that doesn't look right. I went off and checked the facts and it was wrong. So I think, especially if you are using stats and things like that, just be very careful because it can be a bit random.
Yeah, there's a term for that, isn't there? I think it might be AI delusion or something, where hallucination. That's it, Mike. Yeah, where I think I was putting together something and I kind of asked it, I think it was Claude actually to actually just kind of summarize and put in some quotes, etc. And it just gave incorrect quotes. And I said, "Where did you get this quote from?" And then it just replied, "Oh, I appear to have, not got this from what you asked for, So do you want me to, it's kind of a non-apologetic, yeah, just didn't get it right." Seems to happen quite frequently. Mike, do you come across this quite a bit?
So, yeah, a lot really, and I think there's two things. There's one, it's probabilistic. The way ChatGPT and LLMs work, it's not giving you a perfect answer. It's trying to guess what the right answer should be based on the questions you've answered, which means it'll be inaccurate. But I think you've got to therefore think of it more like how you would interact with a human, because if you would give it to a member of your team or an external agency, you're still going to check it and make sure it makes sense and logical. You can't just trust it at first base. But I did a really interesting project. I don't know if I've told you about this, Romesh, last year in defence, and we were asked to test AI for soldiers. And we did a little exercise in Salisbury Town Centre where I went for a walk and we gave 3 teams an AI and they had to find me. And so there's 3 teams were wandering around, took a whole day. And the exercise was we give them information and prompts. And what we found, and it was a trust-based question, and what we found was at first, everyone didn't know whether to trust the AI or use sort of Google, things like that. They then very quickly went to 100% trust. Where is Mike? Go and find him. Oh, he's probably in Costa Coffee or by the cathedral. So they were literally following it perfectly. And then they quickly realized it was telling them the wrong road names or the wrong locations, and it wasn't very good. It was good, but not perfect. And then by the final stage, they were going, right, we need to do a bit of strategy. We need to get it asking the right questions, and it can be really useful. And it was a really interesting exercise in how humans need to mature how we build up our trust and understanding of AI. And I think that applies in the marketing space, in all the spaces we're talking about here, Debbie. It still needs the expert, still needs the strategy, still needs the validation, but it can automate much of the processes.
Yeah,
I think it's all about value add at the end of the day, isn't it? That's what, you know, humans experience, expertise can bring. And if you can demonstrate that in your service or product, then that's the key. Yeah, absolutely.
brilliant.
I want to pick up on one thing you talk a lot about, Debbie, strategy. And I think it's one of the pieces I see missing from a lot of founders. And do you think you've developed that due to the fact that you've had 20 years of experience running your own businesses? Or do you think that's always been embedded as part of Debbie's way of running her businesses and really thinking about the strategy and pausing and look, the fact that you've reviewed all your customers and gone, what are they doing and where are they and what is their motivation? I was thinking, I haven't done that. And so is it something that's inherently in you? And is it something you see in a lot of the founders that you work with as part of your business awards? Is it a missing gap, I guess, is my question.
Yeah, I mean, I go back to when I set the business up, as I said, it was a very accidental thing. So after a while, when I realized I had a business, by the way, because I thought, oh, yeah, no, I have got a business.
It takes a while.
In those days, there was a government-backed support association called Business Link. And Business Link existed to provide entrepreneurs with help with their business. And I think I found out about it through this networking group that I was in, this 6 a.m. start group. And I went along to a session that was run for startup businesses, and Romesh will know Roma Bromick.
I do.
The judges of the Best Business Women Awards, and she was assigned as my Business Link advisor. And I had a one-to-one with her, and she is an incredible, businesswoman, and she talked about strategy from those early days. And this particular course that I went on talked about strategy of setting up your business. And I think I realized quite early on that, you know, you need to put a lot of thought into your business as you go along and how you build it. And like you said earlier, the people you build it with and the services that you offer and the research behind those services. And so I was very blessed to get that support in those early years. And they did a lot of different courses that you could go on about running a business. I was on a NatWest Bank Accelerator program for a year, going back, 25 years ago, probably. And that was like a monthly in person. It was actually held at the University of Hertfordshire as well. And we used to go once a month and do a whole day with NatWest and their business advisors. And I think, you know, I learned a lot in those early years. And you have to remember there weren't very many female entrepreneurs then either. You know, I was still in a room full of men. So it's been wonderful to be part of the female entrepreneur revolution, because at the time I felt quite isolated as a woman. There weren't many of us. There were few and far between, really. And certainly running a marketing business, I mean, that was like, what? You know, that.
Touching on your Business Women Award, how have you seen that evolution of women as entrepreneurs over your time? And where do you reflect on where we are now at this point?
In a way, I'm quite sad in 2025 that we still need the Best Business Women Awards. And I say that not because I don't like celebrating female entrepreneurship, but I say it with sadness that we're still in a situation where we need it. We still need it, because women are still not on a level playing field with men when it comes to running a business or even in the boardroom. So, you know, I was hoping in my lifetime that we will no longer need the Best Business Women Awards, because we will be on a level playing field with our male counterparts. I don't actually think that's going to happen. If you think like 50 years ago, women were allowed to have a mortgage and a bank account by themselves. So that's actually not that long ago. That's in my lifetime. And I would have thought that we would have been further forward by now than what we are in terms of female business owners still only get a very small percentage of investment than their male counterparts as well.
That's a stunning fact about mortgages and bank accounts, and really not that long ago. Incredible. Yeah. So you talked about just now, that it's hard for women to gain investment for businesses. Can you, what are the reasons for that? What
most of the investors are men. Sorry, but that's a fact.
Yeah.
Most of the investment companies, VCs, are men.
Is that a lack of understanding of situations? Is that a lack of support?
It's because the money is still predominantly held by men. So therefore, women are at this disadvantage from the get-go because there aren't as many women with the wealth to invest in female-run companies. So it's a perpetual cycle, really, because women take time out to have children. That becomes our disadvantage, and we actually earn less in most cases than our male counterparts in a corporate setting. And actually, what's really interesting here, because I do work with a mix of businesses, I will tell you now that women struggle to charge what they're worth, whereas men don't. And so therefore, female-run businesses tend to earn less than their male counterparts. And that's because a lot of women have an issue with charging what they're worth, because it's a confidence thing. And I stand firm on my pricing. And, and I have done that for many years, but I didn't in the early days, because I think there's a tendency to think, oh, yeah, I need to get this work in and I need to do these things. And, they're challenging me on my pricing, so I'll drop it. Now I don't. I'm very firm about it and have been for a few years. If you don't want to pay me what I think I'm worth, then go and find somebody else. That's my attitude now. But there are women out there, and I literally did a mentoring session with somebody about 3 weeks ago who I was like, well, what are you this is ridiculous. You shouldn't be charging that. That's about 50% less than what the market rates are. And she was like, oh, yeah, I know, but, and it's a confidence thing. She's really good at what she does. Yeah, it's a confidence thing. And I see this a lot. And that was one of the reasons I set up the Best Business Women Awards, for that very reason, because when I was at I won the East of England Business Champion Award back in 2014. And when I look back at the photographs, because I don't think you're necessarily aware of it on the night, but when I looked at the photos, I thought, oh my goodness, there's only 3 women here. There's 25 men and 3 women. What on earth's going on? And then I started talking to women, business owners, and I was like, why do you, why have you never entered awards? Oh, well, I don't really feel good enough. And and I was sitting there thinking, oh God, I've got to do something to change this. This is wrong. How are we going to power ourselves forward and make, women seen as serious entrepreneurs if we don't start putting ourselves out there? So that's where the awards were born, from that. And yes, there are a lot more incredible women out there running businesses now than there was 10 or 15 years ago. Still got a long way to go, because what women stumble with is the actual growth aspect, because they can't get the investment to take their business to the next level.
And what's the blocker to investment then? You mentioned it's the money and the fact that males predominantly have the money. But is there something more in the types of businesses that you see women running that are looking for investment? Is there anything more in the sort of demographic of what you're seeing in your business awards? Of the type of companies women run?
There's a thriving sector in the children and families sector of women who have grown a business and franchised it, because franchising is actually a way of getting investment in your business. Yeah. Because you actually then have more money to do things. And we've seen some brilliant people come through the Best Business Women Awards, some of which have been on Dragon's Den, which is interesting. So Kate Ball is the one that would immediately spring to mind with Mini First Aid. And she's an incredible female entrepreneur. She's got, I think, 6 children, 2 of which I think are twins, but has grown this amazing business. And she's got franchises all up and down the country, and got investment from Sarah Davis on Dragon's Den, because had tried other methods of getting investment and wasn't getting anywhere with it. Because I think often investors think, oh, she's a woman, she's got children, you know, you don't become as investable as potentially a man who doesn't have those ties and responsibilities. There must be some bias going on there. I don't believe there isn't. So
yeah, I think you're right. I think one of the things we've been championing on Strive and Thrive is the fact that entrepreneurs should think about part-time businesses. It's okay to run a part-time business. You can be a full-time employee, but you can also work 1 day a week, 2 days a week, part-time. But the implications of doing that, and I think women being a really good example in this conversation, the implication of being that, it does position you in a slightly difficult place, because investors don't like that so much at the moment. There's a bit of they do frown upon part-time businesses, or businesses where the founder isn't working 7 days a week, 100 hours a week kind of logic, fully invested.
It's true.
And I think it's that perspective of what entrepreneurship is. We often talk about that in terms of entrepreneurship's this kind of visionary leader. Everyone puts Musk in that. That's not what we're really talking about here. If for people who want to run successful family-led businesses, part-time, full-time, whatever that might look like.
Exactly.
Yeah, on entrepreneurship ultimately is much, much wider, isn't it, in scope than that? And it could be looking to achieve far more than just pure profitability and supercharged global growth. You know, I think there's so much more space for lots of people. And yeah, as Mike says, you know, we're trying to kind of encourage discussions in that way. And Debbie, it's so inspiring to hear you talk so passionately about, you know, the challenges that women face. I know, obviously, based on so much of what you do is trying to kind of encourage and support, which is an amazing thing. The Best Business Women Awards ceremony is coming up soon, in the next month. I'm honestly really privileged to have been invited to be a judge at those awards. Last year was the 10th anniversary. I know you're going to be really busy in the run up to that, but one thing I kind of really wanted to just touch upon was, I mean, I didn't really, you know, when you asked me to be a judge, I didn't quite know what to expect. I kind of thought, okay, well, it'll be, you know, obviously interesting to judge various businesses and assess them, to kind of go along to the awards evening. And I didn't quite know what to expect. But the thing I definitely wasn't expecting was that really special, and I really do mean special, that sense of community. You know, there was so much camaraderie, there was so much support, and there wasn't that real competitive edge that you might expect at certain ceremonies of that ilk. So I've seen firsthand how you've built that amazing community. You know, so what's next? You've touched on the SME Awards. Tell us a little bit about that, and how maybe the Best Business Awards might evolve going forwards too.
So every year, I get men who come up to me at the ceremony at the end and say, "Oh, this has been amazing. I've been to so many award ceremonies. What you've created here is just truly unique. Why don't you have a Best Businessman category?" And I'm like, I think you're missing the point of what this is about. So no, we won't be doing that. Oh, you know, you should run SME awards. That, you know, I work for a company, we'd love to enter something like this. And so it's been on the cards since 2019. So quite a long time. And you might say, well, why have you not acted before? Well, of course, in 2020, we had the pandemic. So Best Business Women Awards was delivered online. And then unfortunately, I'd had an accident in 2018, which has resulted in multiple surgeries on my leg. And I knew I needed a third operation, quite a serious one, because it left me in a cast for 3 months. And I knew this was on the cards, and it had been delayed because of the pandemic. So I had that done in 2022. And then we decided to move to the Southwest, which is obviously a big thing, moving house. So we moved in 2023, had lots of work done on the house. And then I have been planning these new awards for the last 12 months. So they are launching. And I guess what I'm bringing to the market is my unique ability to bring a community together, to have that legacy. A lot of awards just have an awards night, and that's fine. But what I tried to do was think, hang on a minute, we've got 100 successful women in this room, most of which won't get to talk to each other on the night. Let's think about how we can bring them together in online as well as in person. And, because it's a force of nature when you've got so many successful people, because they can share and they can work together and potentially do business with each other. And so when I set the awards up in 2015, that's what I started. I mean, my first winners drinks, there were only 14 winners in year one. So it's very small with the sponsors and some of the judges. And obviously that's grown over the years. And I'm going to bring the same thing to the Best SME Awards. But what I will do is join up. The winners drinks will be joined together with the Best SME Awards and the Best Business Women Awards. So there will be some joining up. And there will also be some separation. So the Best SME Awards don't have industry-specific categories in the same way that the Best Business Women Awards do. So the categories are slightly different. The emphasis is slightly different. But the actual ceremony will be very much mirrored with the one we run, because we know how well that works. And our other USP is that everybody gets an award, which, again, I've had a lot of backlash on that from people within the awards industry, and people like telling me how mad I am and why would I do that. But we're not a bums on seats awards. So there are a lot of awards out there that shortlist everybody because they want to have 500 people in the room. There's not really a lot of care in the process of what they're doing. Whereas that's not what we do, as you know. And if you are good enough to have a seat at my ceremony, then you are good enough to walk away with a silver award, or obviously if you win your category you get a gold award. So I'm very much about recognizing people's achievements and celebrating that in a non-competitive environment, because often the sort of terminology you hear people say, oh yeah, we're here tonight and we're up against XYZ companies or whatever. I don't want people to feel they're up against anybody. I want people to feel, hey, we are finalists in this category along with some other incredible businesses, and we're all in the same boat. We've all been recognized for what we've done and what we've achieved, because fundamentally, coming back to talking about investment, investors like businesses that have won awards. They are critical really into growing your business.
I think the thing to kind of clarify as well, because you said everyone wins an award, but actually it's the finalists who win.
It's the finalists.
Yes, just to clarify that.
Yeah, no, it's only the people selected to come to the final. That's it.
Yeah. And to underline your point, and this is something that I was really impressed with, it's the legitimacy of the awards, because the assessment process is very robust. And I remember chatting to you because I received an email from a random marketing awards ceremony which said, please apply for these awards, and if you pay this amount, you'll be invited to an evening and you'll get an award. So essentially you're buying an award, which isn't very legitimate in my view. So the assessment process, and I know, having done it a few times, is thorough. It's really structured. So, well done to you. And I imagine that, that's going to be exactly the same case with the SME Awards. It's going to be a broader sense. But are you going to be focusing on community in the same way? You mentioned the combined drinks, etc. But you're going to still focus on bringing people together. Yeah,
because I think that's the key. That's what's made this a standout awards program, is what I get pleasure out of is not only someone wins an award, but they come to me and go, oh my gosh, I'm now doing business with this company, or I'm now collaborating with this company, or I've been able to help this charity or this company with something. because we're an incredible bunch of people. These are the top businesses in the UK. And I find that that's what's the most satisfying thing out of the awards. It is that satisfaction of knowing that you've made such a difference. When people contact me and say, I've now been taken seriously by Co-op and I've sat down and had a meeting with their buyers and they're going to stock my product because they were impressed that I'd won a business award. That's exactly what she said to me. She said, I've won Good Taste Awards for my product, but I had never won a business award, and now they're taking me seriously.
What would you recommend to an SME who is looking to apply for an award such as the ones with yourself? What would your recommendations be to a founder? Because there are lots out there, aren't there, as well?
There are.
Mentions the ones you pay for.
Yeah, don't ever do that. I think there are industry-specific awards, there's local awards, and there's national awards. So you have to, comes back to strategy. You have to look at where is it you want to be known, and if you're, let's say a good example would be a local plumbing company. They want publicity in their county area because they don't trade across the UK. So therefore, they need to focus on local awards, because that's what's important to them, to get local recognition, local publicity, and be able to say, look, we are one of the best companies in this area at what we do. But if your business is national, then you might want to look at national awards because you want to get more recognition nationally. And if your business is also in a specific industry, recruitment is probably a good example, then you want to maybe look at the recruitment awards, because for some people it will be a badge of honor to have an industry specific award as well as those mixed national awards. So it comes back to a strategy situation again. And the website I'd recommend people go and look at is awards-list.co.uk. And they pretty much list every awards locally, globally, industry specific. So it's quite a good starting point to go and have a little look. And then you need to do your due diligence on those awards. So how's it judged? What are the costs? Who are the previous winners? What's their social media like? What publicity are you going to gain from it? What's the standard and the recognition that they're giving out? So I think, there's a whole piece of work around research once you've decided what awards you're going to do.
That's really interesting. I think that's an important point for people, isn't it? I think I love the way you come back to strategy all the time. Such a strategic thinker in an SME. It's great.
Yeah, and I think that's a great way to kind of wrap this up in many ways. I think, Debbie, very well done on everything you've achieved today. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing all of this experience and knowledge with us, for highlighting the challenges that female entrepreneurs face, and really, demonstrating that fire in your belly. Another takeaway, I think, is that focus on joining the dots, bringing community and building a community, because it is about support and helping each other. So I think that's absolutely fantastic. Mike, do you have anything else to kind of say in terms of what you've taken away?
The award comment at the end, Debbie, was super interesting and my takeaway personally. But I think the bigger messages that I think have come out from you is think very strategically on your business. And I think you do that really well. And I think that stands out from you over other people we often bring on Strive and Thrive. I'm going to say know your numbers. And the reason being is everybody says it. And I think we need to keep selling that message. Know your numbers. And I know Romesh, I'm going to get Romesh a t-shirt with it written on, but also
your numbers. Yes.
But the power of networking and community building, and it is so important in what you've talked about all today, Debbie. Understanding what's going on in AI versus awards versus mentoring, all of that is so important to any founder, particularly female founders at the moment in the challenge it is. So really interesting. Thanks for joining us, Debbie.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and actually a final point, I'm really struck by how strategic you are, and I think that's a very, very good skill to have. So I think that's a great learning for everyone. Don't just work, kind of in the business, work on it as well, and think ahead. So Debbie, thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you to everyone very much for listening or watching. We hope you enjoyed this discussion as much as we have. Strive and Thrive is a regular podcast series for entrepreneurs, founders, and leaders of SME businesses. If you enjoyed today's episode, we'd be super grateful if you could like, follow, and subscribe to our YouTube and podcast channels. Our next session will be in a couple of weeks. A big thanks finally to Mike and the rest of the Strive and Thrive team. See you all soon. Thank you for listening to Strive and Thrive.